I know Brett's probably gotten some crap over the years at how he just shows up for 16, 17 games a year and gets it done as we welcome him in. Brett, I don't know if you've seen the news about Arkansas basketball player Trey Wade trying out for tight end at the National Football League. What do you think about his prospects based on what you know about this league?
It's a long shot, but there's been obviously some guys that will go in the Hall of Fame with Julius Peppers and Gates out there. Were dominant in basketball and then had a dominant career in the NFL, and so it's all about the body position. If he's able to kind of learn that, they'll teach him some techniques and teach him how to block. He's been around football, he's been around sports, so he's an athlete. And then what we've always talked about in special teams, if he can get in and actually produce on special teams, he'll have a good chance of maybe making a 53-man roster, or for his case, a practice squad wouldn't be bad for the first year because then you get to learn and develop a little bit more.
For a guy, and again, I don't know 100% if Trey hasn't played football, wasn't in his bio, but for a guy that hasn't necessarily played a lot, what is the most difficult thing, Brett, to pick up in the National Football League?
Well, it's a totally different sport. Even everybody knows, when you're transitioning from, football to basketball, everybody says you got to get in basketball shape. It's the same thing on the football field. You got to learn all that. The weight training is completely different. We know he's a physical guy, but it's a real physical line down there when you're having the blocks from the linebackers and defensive ends. So you got to think of a guy like him being able to go out there and block like a Von Miller. And can he go out there and do that and not get the quarterback killed? Those are the things he's going to have to pick up. We saw Tim Tebow try to make that transition, and he obviously failed. So it's an uphill battle, but if he gets in there and continues to work hard, people are going to give him a shot just for his body size.
We were kind of talking before you joined the conversation. Can you imagine if Corliss Williamson had tried to play tight end, or maybe a LeBron James after he kind of got his size put together a little bit later in his career? There are always guys you watch play basketball that you say, man, they would have made a good tight end, or they'd have made a good wide receiver, perhaps. When you've watched Arkansas basketball or any other level, has there been players over the years that stood out to you and said they would have been really good at safety or corner or tight end or whatever in football?
I think all the guys that you mentioned, yes. But the biggest thing, too, though, is this guy's got to be able to – we don't know what it's like when they come across the middle and they take a hit, and what it's like when they have to go in the line of scrimmage, for a big, long drive. That's what's made Gronkowski so great is, he makes a lot of great catches over the years, but he has always been able to block. Jason Witten, when he was with Dallas, he was always able to block, and that's what really sets those guys apart, because they're able to contribute there on the line of scrimmage in the run game. They're big physical bodies, and it's hard to look at a basketball floor and say this guy's going to be able to make it when you're not really comparing. There's a lot of ticky-tack fouls that we see and a lot of complaining. It's stuff that's not going to be called in the NFL, because they're going to grab and hold you, and they're going to do a lot of things that's not able to do on the basketball court. So it's a little bit more physical, and seeing that those guys will be able to take that hit and be able to come back that next play.
All right, let's talk about something that'll be a little less physical. That'll be Arkansas's practice on Saturday as they are winding down spring practice for this third time for Sam Pittman. As you followed what's going on the last couple of weeks since I guess middle of March, and now we'll kind of wrap up for the public side of it this Saturday. Any takeaways? Anything that has jumped out at you as Arkansas's closing down spring practice?
I think the big thing, I think that's what everybody's talking about, is the continuity with everybody. Having your coordinators back for a third straight year. The players, you've got leadership. Obviously, we know what KJ. Things have changed over the years. What we've been talking about Arkansas football, and I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. You see that the growth that we're having. We're able to actually finally make. We've been talking about that for years. Can we make that 2 and 3 year transition? And we're finally there. From what it looks like on paper and everything, going against each other, that we're being able to go good on good in practice. We're able to actually get a good solid look because we have some competition. And those are the biggest things that will carry this football team forward, especially moving forward into fall camp.
How hopeful are you with this offensive line? You look at a guy like Ricky Stromberg, who comes back with some experience at center. You got a 4-year letterman in Dalton Wagner, Bo Limmer back at one of your guard spots. You got guys that have had snaps. Then you got some young players that are coming in as well. What are your expectations this year for productivity out of the offensive line?
I think the sky's the limit for them because those guys that have had snaps, those are going to be the guys that pick up those new guys, those guys that come in and kind of build that continuity between the offensive line. And I think that coming from an offensive line head coach, you're going to have that relationship. That offensive linemen have always had that special relationship that nobody else does. They're goofy, they're funny, but they get together and they fight for one another. And that's what you're seeing out of these guys right now. And when that happens, those guys, they want to protect for the pass game, but the biggest thing that they want to do is they want to be able to run the football because they get to line up and hit that defense line. And so I think that we'll see that run game kind of pick up a little bit more this year.
Brett, I know that punters aren't exactly the most spectacular or alluring topic. What do you think about that Aussie, Max Fletcher, that they got?
I mean, punters are people too. So I think it's great because we've seen what we've had in the past with Aussies, and they bring a special uniqueness to the game because they have always done that running kick where a lot, we don't grow up in America doing the running kick style, so it's always a little bit uncomfortable. So that enables you to, one, you have a lot more creativity in rolling right or left into your punt protection. Then that's going to minimize the return game because they don't really know where you're kicking, and that's also going to open up some fakes. We remember a few years ago there in Dallas where we had that big long, I think it was 50-some-yard fake there in Dallas against Texas A&M. And that's the ability that brings, that you can bring a lot of different aspects to the punting game when you have an athletic body back there.
I know that you and I would love to see Treylon Burks be drafted by the Green Bay Packers, but let's say the Cowboys or someone else nabs him. Who do you think that your former organization is going to go with in their first-round pick to help out Aaron Rodgers or just help out the team in LaFleur?
So they've always been true. Whenever their pick comes, they always get best available. I know they need wide receiver help. If there's not a wide receiver that they didn't think should be in the first round, they're going to stay true to their draft board and pick somebody else. Mark Murphy was quoted the other day about saying it's going to be an exciting draft. Green Bay had never had that, so it's hard to be hopeful to see if they actually make any moves to move up in the draft. But I think that they will stay true to that, to draft and develop. That there's certain teams, they don't make huge splashes, and so far they haven't done that in the draft, so we'll see what happens.
I was reading yesterday, I think there's 8 teams with 2 picks in the first round this year. How important is it to get it right, and how impactful can the first round be this year, considering where, 8 different organizations can grab up top-end talent in the draft?
Offensive and defensive line are, they're huge. They can go in and play immediately. The learning curve on the defense, those guys can go in and play. The quarterbacks have always typically struggled in the first round. Wide receivers, they kind of pick it up, but the biggest thing, and we've talked about again, special teams, wide receivers, these guys have never played special teams, and then they're their first-round pick, and they've got to go in and learn this. And so those guys who end up producing, those are the guys that you see kind of make that big transition from college to pro. But the biggest jump for a lot of guys is that year 2, except for the offensive and defensive line where they can go in and they've already got that kind of body style, and they're going to be thrown to the fire because you're only going to have 7 offensive and defensive linemen that really are dressed on a Sunday. Anybody
from the quarterback spot stand out at you? Who do you think could be the most impactful quarterback early in a career after we've seen a good run of some impactful young quarterbacks the last 2 or 3 years?
We have, and the biggest issue with quarterbacks, so they can all be great, and it's because it's around the system that they're in. And the difference of like a Mac Jones and to a Joe Burrow, well, Joe Burrow's got a better defense. And so that's what you see a lot of these teams, even Dallas, when Dak Prescott and Ezekiel came in as rookies, they had that dominant season. They went, got the number 1 seed because you're able to put the money on the defense and the offensive weapons. And so that allows you to kind of produce a little bit more than these teams like Green Bay, and now Dallas is in that mix in Kansas City where you're paying your quarterback, $30, $40, $50 million a year. You've got to that money doesn't go as far. And so when you're getting on a rookie deal and you have a good organization that can build a team around you really fast, then you're going to have a Cincinnati that can produce some numbers and really make good long playoff runs for a few years.
All right, that's Brett Goode. He's a former Green Bay Packer for 10 years, won a Super Bowl there, former Razorback as well, now part of the winning team at Henderson Phillips. Hey, we've been on kind of red alert for storms the last few days. The River Valley got hit with some severe weather a day ago. We got some more weather on the way. That's when you don't want to be worrying about, am I covered for that? That's when you want to know that, hey, my insurance agent is taking care of me. That's where they need to call you.
That's exactly right. After that storm, that tornado that dropped down a couple of weeks ago, and then you have everything that we had in F1 confirmed right outside of Fort Smith yesterday there in Barling. And so those are the times where you want to make sure that everything's protected, that you're covered for everything, and no better time to give us a call now.
And nothing worse than hearing that hail pelting down on your roof and wondering, what's my deductible for the roof? Am I covered for that as well? Is that actual cash value or replacement? You want to know all of those things here as we go into spring storm season. If you got questions about insurance, employee benefits, health insurance for your entire crew, retirement plans, and more, give Brett a call at 479-651-2292. That's 651-2292. Brett Goode with Henderson Phillips. Appreciate you, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good. Thanks,
BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs, sports info, and odds. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's odds for the Masters Championship and the start of Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started, so join today. Learn why everyone is saying BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on popular sports and games. BetOnline, where the game starts.